A while back when I was doom scrolling, I started to notice these vegan recipe pages that I'd never seen before. They were different, but they all somehow looked very similar. They all had pictures of food in these very homey looking kitchens that just popped off the page. Hi, I'm Val, and I made the recipe website Very Vegan Val. You'll have to excuse my voice today. I'm getting over a cold, and my voice was entirely gone about 3 days ago, so there's been a lot of improvement, but we're not quite there yet. Now back to the subject at hand. Well, I'm sure I've scrolled past countless of these images just thoughtlessly. I started noticing that account after account were posting these AI-generated images. And once you start noticing them, they're everywhere. It started to feel like every fourth or fifth thing I saw was an AI-generated vegan recipe. Let's take a look together. All right, so this is one of the pages that first came across my feed, or at least that I first noticed. You can see it's Patricia's Classic Kitchen. It's got this sort of grandmothery like figure on it. And I noticed that's pretty common in these AI pages. When you click on the images, you can see they're really bold, they pop out at you, and then they have these blurry, sort of homey looking kitchen backgrounds. Some other things you can notice are things like texture. This lettuce almost looks like a cloth. It doesn't really look like lettuce. The shine on this bread, not that you can't get a good reflection on some bread, but AI food tends to have a lot of really pronounced highlights to it. You can see the highlights again here. You can also see things like, look how none of these rice grains seem squished at all. They're all individually defined. See how this basil is perfect, dark green. Look at that right there. It's not at all wilted from the heat of the curry. Everything's just a little bit too perfect. And then sometimes things are just weird. Like, look at the texture on that cauliflower. It almost looks like the cauliflower has boils. Another thing to think about is, imagine that this is one person or maybe a small team of people making these recipes. It would be unusual to have a very diverse background. But if we look here, we can see we have a black stove with a silver handle right here. Pop over, the kitchen island has changed colors, and we have a black handled stove. Pop over here, we have a silver stove. And then just go to the next image, and it's one of those drop-in stovetops. So it would be unusual to have that many different places that you are shooting your content from. Additionally, so this post, 6 posts all in 1 hour. So this account is creating a huge amount of content. So again, if this is a single person or a small team of people, even if they're just resharing old recipes, this is a lot to be creating. Let's check out another account. So this one I think was a little bit more clever with regard to explaining away differences in backgrounds, things like that. You can see that they claim that these 5 definitely real women are the ones creating recipes for this website. So let us look at some of their stuff. Again, you can see super shiny, super shiny. This avocado has a very rigid texture. This picture actually kind of looks like a real one to me, but I don't know. What do you think? Absolutely hilarious. This picture is for crispy cauliflower. It's basically a breaded cauliflower, which interestingly is breaded with eggs and Parmesan cheese, which not vegan or plant-based, but hilariously, the way AI seems to have interpreted this is that because it's fried in oil, they've served it in a pool of oil. It's so funny. Okay, here's, I think, a good example of another thing that I feel like you often see in AI generated food, which is that the ingredients seem to be sitting whole in the wrap. So they don't really look like they've been cut. So let's look at this. Firstly, this creamy polenta or hummus-like substance is supposed to be coconut milk with a little bit of soy sauce, but still, like, it's thick looking. That does not make any sense. I've noticed that AI seems to really struggle with chickpeas too. It makes it way too smooth looking and they like get rid of all the texture. And then look at the way this parsley is layered on top. It's not like integrated into the dish. It's almost like a layer of plastic parsley was placed on top of the chickpeas. Here's another really good example of AI struggling with chickpeas. Like, what is that? It looks like a slimy alien pear, kind of, on some hummus. Another really important thing to look at is to look at the recipe they're describing and then look at the actual picture. So this says that it's a portobello sloppy joe, and there's no tofu, there's no like TVP, there's nothing else that would create that meaty texture. And I don't know if you've ever cooked with a portobello mushroom, but you could get like a dice, but you're not gonna get this like craggly, crumbly, like sauce grabbing quality that's shown in this picture. That doesn't make any sense. This is supposed to be lion's mane, apparently. It just looks like rice. Here's a really good picture of what I was talking about, where it seems like things were placed into the wrap, but then you cut the wrap and nothing gets cut. There's no half beans, there's no squished beans. These are all fully intact, whole beans that are just hovering at the surface of this burrito. Also, what I assume is meant to be like wax paper or parchment paper, it's really beautiful. It looks like silk, or I don't know, it looks like an old-fashioned oil painting, but it doesn't look like parchment paper. Oh, I love this. Look at how firm and frozen and almost freezer burnt the ice cream looks up here. And then right next to it is like a river of melted ice cream. I think if you wanted to actually achieve this look, you'd have to melt some ice cream separately and pour it over the frozen ice cream, which is just silly. Okay, so I think we're pretty much good here, but I wanted to go back to this one right here because this is a recipe for a vegan tuna salad, and it's meant to be made with chickpeas. No explanation for the large pink chunks in it. It's chickpeas, right? So let's go ahead and find ourselves a recipe or two to make. I'm gonna start in this page. Now this page is really interesting because going through it, a lot of this content's AI. I would say that this is AI, but I don't know that all of it is. Like, is that AI? It might be. There were a couple in here that, like this, like, do you think that's AI? I think that's a real picture. It's hard for me to know anyway. If you know, tell me. This is the one I thought we would make together. You can see it has 4 pictures, which is actually really unusual. When it's an AI generated image, there's much more likely to be 1 picture because then you don't have to replicate anything and people can't see inconsistencies. Like, for example, right here, there's a silver stove. Right here, there's a black stove, different stove. White cabinets on this side of the stove, not on this side. They have a similar marble countertop in 3 of them, but then not in this one, so I don't know what's going on there. And while it does kind of initially look like maybe the same sandwich every time, if you look at the bread closely enough, you will see that that is not the exact same bread. Now, of course, they could have made a couple sandwiches, that's possible, you know, but when you start to lose me is when you look at the ingredients of this recipe, and they claim that it is made out of artichoke hearts or hearts of palm. So what do you think those are? Artichoke hearts or hearts of palm? And why are they so orange? Anyway, I thought we would make that one together. The other thing that I was really struck upon when I was looking at the recipe is they only have you use 1 tablespoon of mayonnaise for the entire recipe, and that just doesn't seem like it's gonna be enough. Obviously all, or at least most of these images are AI generated. But where did the recipes come from? My suspicion is that those are AI generated as well, but they could be legitimate recipes. They could be recipes that were stolen for other creators, or maybe, and I really don't think so, but maybe these are legitimate creators who just don't do their own photography and use AI instead. And even if they are AI generated, which I think they probably are, that doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna be bad. So let's do a little taste test. We're gonna start off with our artichoke hearts. They said you could use hearts of palm or artichokes. And I opted for the artichoke hearts just because they're cheaper. We need 2 cups. There we go, about 1.5 cans. And they'd like our artichokes chopped into chunks, which is not the most descriptive phrasing ever, but we'll go with it. It wants us to combine them in a bowl with the ingredients for our dressing. It just says to combine them in a bowl, but I think it will mix a little bit better if I add the dressing ingredients first and then the artichokes. So that's what I'm gonna do. A tablespoon of mayonnaise. It also wants a tablespoon of mustard, a teaspoon of Old Bay, and a teaspoon of smoked paprika. A tablespoon of chopped fresh parsley. Now this is a heaping tablespoon, and even then it was just one sprig of parsley. And then the juice of half a lemon. Now let's add our 2 cups of artichoke hearts. And they also suggested that you brush some melted butter on it and then toast it. That sounds delicious, but I'm a little bit lazy, so I'm just going to melt some butter in a pan and then plop it in there. 1 step instead of 2. And now let's assemble the sandwich. Start with a piece of our toasted bread. Then they say to add a layer of romaine and then a generous spoonful of our filling. And then they have you drizzle with spicy mayo or your favorite dressing for a kick. I do not have any spicy mayo around, but I will add a little drizzle of hot sauce. All right, as you can see, it does not look like the picture. It's clearly artichokes. If I'd used hearts of palm, I think they would have clearly looked like hearts of palm, and it's much paler than the AI image. But let's answer the even more important question. Is this recipe any good? A short answer, no, it's not really good. It just tastes like I'm eating canned artichokes, hot sauce, lettuce, and bread. I'm picking up maybe a little smoked paprika flavor, but other than that, really just canned artichoke with nothing done to it, just drained canned artichoke. And artichokes are delicious, but I like them cooked and mixed into things and treated and prepared, not just kind of slapped on a sandwich, which is what this tastes like. All right, let's look at another account. And if you think this one looks familiar, it's because it's basically the same as Patricia's kitchen, but this one's Susan's kitchen. Let's look at some pictures. Again, all of the beans are perfect at the top. The parsley's sort of laden over in a strange plasticky fashion. Again, the textural difference between this tzatziki-like sauce and falafel and the very bowl-like lettuce cups, it just doesn't look real, does it? A lot of the same stuff as the other accounts. Actually, like, did we see this exact picture in another account? I feel like we did. Look at that hilarious sweet potato. Oh my goodness. It's like cooked on the inside, raw on the outside. It just keeps on going like that forever. We haven't even gone back a whole day yet. Y'all, this is what we're making. It's a super white, fluffy loaf. It's got a crust of whole red lentil. The sides are browned. It's got a little rosemary on top for garnish. And the ingredients are lentils, water, baking powder, and spices. You blend it all up and then bake it. So a lot of people have pointed out that it doesn't seem like it would work. And I agree. I don't get how this would not be, firstly, very dense. If it sets at all, I'm not convinced it will set at all. But if it sets, I don't get how it won't be very dense. And I certainly don't get how the lentils are going to resurrect themselves from being blended. But I'm so excited to find out. Let's give it a shot. I've got my oven preheating, and I've lined a loaf pan with parchment paper per the instructions. I soaked my lentils overnight. Now I'm just going to drain them. 1.5 cups of lentils really does soak up to be a lot. Now we're just gonna blend these with a cup of water. It's very smooth. It smells beany. Next we're gonna add 1/2 teaspoon of salt and 1/2 teaspoon of rosemary, optionally, and a teaspoon of baking powder. Give it another blend. Once combined, it tells you to pour it into your prepared baking pan and then smooth the surface. I don't know, it feels pretty smooth already. Now we're gonna bake for 45 to 50 minutes until the top is firm and golden. So I'll see you in about an hour. Our lentil bread is out of the oven. Shockingly, it doesn't look anything like the picture, but it doesn't look bad. A little bit springy. It's gonna be very dense, I think. but it does seem to have cooked. Let's cut into it. Kind of bizarre. It's orange on the top and then it fades to like a white color. This is not at all what I expected. It smells like rosemary, spongy, dense, holds its shape pretty well. Let's give it a taste. Definitely not what was shown in the photos. And I don't know, it's not really bread. It's more like a plant-based meatloaf, but I don't know, it has a dense texture. If you can't eat bread because you're doing some sort of a keto thing or something like that and you want to try this, it's not the worst thing I've ever had. I wouldn't want to eat a lot of it. Obviously, there are no flecks of lentils in it and there are no lentils magically coating the top. But I would say that overall, this recipe did not deliver what it promised, but it exceeded my expectations. Wow, that was really an interesting journey. Obviously, the AI photos are making promises that the recipes are not really quite delivering on. I genuinely did not think that lentil bread, if you will, would set at all. The lobster rolls, on the other hand, were about what I imagined they would be. I think AI is a really interesting tool. I don't really want to go into the ethics of AI that much at the moment, but I will say this. If I'm making a new recipe and I want to decide who do I trust more to get me a good recipe, I'm going to choose the human that has developed the recipe and tested the recipe and modified the recipe over the artificial intelligence that has just spat something out. I will also say that I think people deserve to know if the images they're looking at were generated by artificial intelligence or were an actual picture taken of the recipe that they are making. Tell me what you think about this in the comments, and I don't know, should I do this again? It was kind of interesting. Were there any other AI recipes I scrolled past that you wish I would have made? Let me know. Also, if you could like this video and subscribe, we would love to see you next time. Bye. You want some bread, baby? Very athletic.